Dragspelhuset.
In today's video, we are talking about the design of the Dragspelhuset, a very weird, unique, and secluded little cabin in the woods of Sweden. A cabin that looks like a creature from the realms of fantasy. A cabin that can move. Hello everybody, my name is Simon, and on this channel I give you a wider and deeper understanding into the whole world of design. Like, for example, today, where we are looking at the world of architectural design. If at any moment you find this video interesting, make sure you click that like button to show your support and subscribe to my channel, avoiding the most unfortunate of events of missing my next video.
Dragspelhuset.
Dragspelhuset. Before we dive into the details of this particular fascinating and rare architectural creature, let me offer you a bit of context to its story. Its creators are two Swedish architects from the studio 24 Hours Architecture, Marjay Lakers and Boris Zeiser. They built this cabin in 2004 as their own personal getaway in the woods from their city life. They bought this 0.7 acre of land in the Glaskogen Reserve in Sweden. This plot of land has more than a few very unique and challenging zoning requirements that severely restrict how you can build on it, as well as some very beautiful natural features. For example, it has a direct shore to the lake Overgla, as well as a stream on property. But most important of all, it has an existing small fishing shack from the 1800s. Let's now talk about the challenges of the site in detail and how this 1800s shack is the key to its existence. The key that opened the door of possibility for this fantastical cabin to exist in our world. What I mean by that is that it's not permitted for new construction to take place in the reserve where the plot of land was located in, except if you are doing an extension to an existing structure. Meaning that the new construction needed to be directly connected to the existing cabin to be considered an extension to the structure and not an addition to the property. Regulations do not permit building close to the lake shore except, once again, if it's an extension, but if so, with a regulated maximum square footage allowed, in this case of a maximum of around 300 square feet. Another regulatory limitation that designers needed to navigate through was the proximity of the construction to the site boundary, which needed to be 4 meters away clear. Now, the creek seems to be occupying the edge of this regulatory boundary, furthering limiting the actual constructible area that the designers had available to use. The designers started by generating the maximum cabin size they could within all of these restrictions, resulting in a cabin of around 300 square feet located in front of the existing shack to capitalize on the lake view. But the designers were not satisfied with the resulting permitted new construction square footage for their cabin, as they had envisioned having more space. So they saw the numerous regulatory limitations as a challenge to be creatively overcome. Being inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water, the designers took a similar, albeit a more modest in scale but arguably more challenging in concept, approach to their design. They wanted their cabin to extend over the creek at will. The designers created the cabin with an expandable and retractable component that made the cabin, when fully extended over the stream, measure around 600 square feet, adding around 300 square feet of additional space, and all that while complying with all the regulatory challenges presented to them. How, you might ask? Well, since the retractable portion of the cabin was not built on ground, it did not count towards the building limitations of the site, circumventing size restrictions as well as setback lines. Take that, regulatory agencies! The cabin is built in a way that allows for its expansion and contraction based on the needs of the occupants and current exterior conditions. A portion of the cabin slides in and out like an accordion would, which is what Dragspelhuset means in Swedish. Accordion House. Duh. So obvious. The design for the movable portion of the cabin was achieved by having its structure and floor rest directly on two rail-bearing steel rails that are manually operated by a series of ropes and pulleys, permitting the movable portion of the cabin to roll in and out. When the cabin expands, it not only becomes more spacious inside, it also adds back its biggest set of operable windows to its suite of oddly shaped fenestrations, permitting a greater amount of light to come into the interior of the cabin. This newly exposed window faces the lake, permitting cross-ventilation in the summer, letting the breeze in to cool the space while being closer to the river and letting the sounds of the running water underneath enter the cabin more easily. When the cabin contracts, the space not only feels more personal and its overall presence in the forest is greatly diminished, but interior heating becomes more efficient since there is less volume of the interior space to be heated. And the cabin, now having a double skin to help with the insulation, almost feels like a cocoon. The inspiration for the appearance of the cabin came from the granite rocks and all the organic detritus that form the surrounding landscape. The designers wanted the cabin to become one more giant boulder or fallen tree in the landscape, helping the cabin fade into the forest instead of standing out. When the cabin is retracted, the windows are hidden in the skin of the building to avoid the reflection of the sun and furthering its integration into the landscape. The retractable portion of the cabin has an angled, pointy nose where the fume of the wood stove comes out of, this way accommodating it while it is still in its contracted form. The resulting amorphous geometry of the building with the horn-like fume, window placement, material selection, and kinetic capabilities generate the interpretation of this cabin as animalistic, looking like a caterpillar, beetle, turtle, or rhinoceros. The kinetic aspect of it just accentuates the feeling of it being alive, like it retracts its head to hibernate in winter and expands it out, reaching out to explore its surrounding in summer. The form, movement, and materiality of this cabin make it feel like it comes out of one of Edgar Allan Poe's poems or one of Tim Burton's movies. The building's exterior material is composed of red cedar siding, which naturally grays, helping the overall goal of blending into the forest while being a naturally rot and pest-resistant organic building material. With the years, moss might grow on the natural structure, furthering its integration into the natural landscape. In this sense, the building's skin, composed of these irregularly placed and shaped cedar sidings, changes with time as a living being does, having its materiality reflect its aging and its connection to the surrounding forestscape deepening as time passes. Within this biomorphic ribcage structure of the cabin, the interior walls mimic the exterior irregularities, but more cleanly with horizontal pine lattices instead of the siding. The interior walls of the retractable portion of the cabin are covered with reindeer hides instead of pine lattice, turning the living room into a fur-lined cave. The reindeer skin serves as an additional layer of insulation to the cabin. Its function and aesthetics inspired by the Sami culture from the northern Scandinavia, but also clearly marking through materiality and its floor height change what portion of the cabin moves and which one does not. The interior space features a minimalistic kitchen with a propane stove, a dining room with its countertop table extending from the kitchen top featuring 5 chairs, and a living room with a couple of chairs. The selection of the lighting fixtures was inspired by the Aurora Borealis, custom red polycarbonate ceiling fixtures by Ingo Maurer, which are powered, as well as all the electricity in the property, by solar power. All wood in the project, except the red cedar, which is from Canada, is locally sourced. The one-room 1800s fishing shack that made this design possible was turned into the bedroom of the cabin, featuring one bed on the floor and another bed that could come down and hover above the main bed to create extra sleeping space lowered by a platform from pulleys, creating a bunker bed scenario. The new cabin connects to the old shack directly by a door. Additionally, the cabin features a main entrance to the project from the main pathway and 2 doors to the deck. One directly from the old fishing shack to the deck, now the bedroom, and the other from the new portion of the cabin. The connection from the cabin to the deck is a double glass door hosted on a glass wall, providing not just what is hierarchically understood as the main entrance to the cabin, but also its biggest and most consistent source of natural lighting. The total cabin square footage ends up at around 775 square feet when taking into consideration the completely expanded version of the cabin featuring the kitchen, living room, dining room, and the bedroom. The cabin has a deck all around it with a few features of its own and connecting the cabin to some other key moments in the property. The deck itself is raised and holds a very organic geometry in its floor plan and stairs. The deck features an exterior bathtub which is heated by a wood stove and fed by the stream. Also has enough space for a small table and a few seats to be placed to enjoy the secluded natural landscape. Also connects to a dock that extends into the lake, strengthening its inhabitants' sense of connection through ease of access to these natural features. There is also an outhouse in the property that keeps within the theme of the main cabin, wanting to blend in with nature as much as possible, looking like it's part of the forest terrain itself. Very Hobbit-like architecture in my opinion. The overall design of this cabin, even though it is biomorphic, is very minimalistic. Its design is not only creative in its aesthetics and form, but also how it navigated the landscape of challenging restrictions and regulations to be able to design it. And as if that was not enough, the designers had what it looks like a very extensive, self-imposed creative challenges of their own that they wanted to make sure they met, like not wanting to create a typical culturally staple red Swedish cottage, but also wanting to respect and blend in with nature as much as possible by not generating a modern glass monument, but rather generate a biomorphic head scratcher. This design is a great example of what happens when designers are not afraid to confront very restrictive and overall very challenging conditions to design in this case resulting in a very ingenious way to use small spaces off-grid and in harmony with its surroundings, creating an architecture that can move, that changes its appearance through its form, expanding and contracting itself to adjust to its environment depending on weather conditions, seasons, or number of occupants. The building, through its form, is now communicating to the exterior world what the function and its role is at that moment. This is an added dimension to the design experience and how architecture, in this case, communicates. It's a step further from seeing a light turn on through a window and knowing someone is home, or seeing the smoke coming out of a chimney and knowing someone is heating the interior. We pick up on all of these cues to interpret the design, and through kinetic architecture, we add one more tool to create and articulate that experience as designers. With that said, we have arrived at the end of this video. If you liked the video and the insights I provided into the world of architecture and into the designs of this particular little weird but cool cabin, make sure to hit that like button as it tells YouTube to show this video to more people. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future videos. Also, consider sharing this video with your friends and family. No better endorsement than a personal recommendation through a shared link. I would love to hear from you in the comments below so we can keep this design conversation going. I'm highly interested in hearing your thoughts or questions that you might have about this cabin design. I would also love to hear any suggestions you might have for future video topics that you might want me to do. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.